Hello and welcome to Horse to Water Study Guides with me, Judge Donovan Mulberry QC. And today we're putting Alfred Lord Tennyson on trial because of his poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade. Order in the court! Bring out the defendant! Oh my god, is that him? He looks like a right tramp.
I'll have you know that I was Poet Laureate for 42 years.
Oh, Poet L'Oreal. What is that? Some type of shampoo?
Poet Laureate! It's the most prestigious title a poet can hold, and I held it longer than any other poet to date.
Order in the court! But honestly, you do need to get some shampoo for that gammy beard, because it's disgusting.
I am one of the nation's most beloved poets. Now, what, in the name of Dante's dandelions, am I on trial for?
Good question, Alfred Lord Tennyson, and I'll tell you why you're on trial. You knew that someone in the army made a terrible error which led to the deaths of hundreds of soldiers in the Light Brigade, but you chose to overlook this fact in your poem. That's why you're on trial. I suggest that you were too scared to blame the army for all those deaths.
Milk toasts! On the contrary, sir, I chose to focus on the heroic efforts of the soldiers.
Soldiers that ended up dead because of dodgy orders.
They fought valiantly and died for their country. They should be remembered, not the military leaders who made mistakes.
We'll see, Tennyson. We'll see. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let me give you some background information on what the chuff's happening here. The year is 1854. On the coast of the Black Sea, the Crimean War is in full flow between the Russians and the British. One particularly famous battle in the Crimean War was called the Battle of Balaclava.
Do you mean this kind of balaclava? No, stupid balaclava is a place!
Now, imagine a great big battlefield. On three sides, well-armed Cossack and Russian forces were dug in, and on the fourth side was a small brigade of British troops known as the Light Brigade. It's not a right tough name, that, is it? Light Brigade. Would have been better if it were stormtroopers. Anyway, not far away from the Brits was a small Russian artillery unit who were retreating because they were proper losers.
Retreat!
That's when this dude, Lord Raglan, decided that the British Light Brigade should chase the retreating Russians and capture their guns.
We should capture those guns.
But because he was a super duggy and the other military leaders with him were thicker than a farmer's fingers,
Great idea, old chap.
Lord Raglan ordered the Light Brigade to charge
Charge!
the wrong way,
That way.
right into the cannons and guns of the well-positioned, heavily armed enemy. Loads of British soldiers ended up dead, and it were a complete shambles. So the question is, why did you choose to focus on the soldiers and their charge rather than the terrible orders given by the idiotic military leaders? I suggest that because you're Poet Laureate, you didn't want to upset the Queen or the government, which would have happened if you would have slagged off the army's leaders. You wanted to hold on to being Poet Laureate, didn't you? So you chose not to focus on the military's mistakes, because you wanted to stay in their good books.
I wanted to honour the efforts of the soldiers. Don't you think they deserved to be remembered?
Well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Tennyson does say, honour the charge they made, honour the Light Brigade, Noble 600. What? Noble 600.
Indeed, and much more.
You would like us to think that you were just trying to make the soldiers look brave, but you also made the poem very frightening, didn't you?
War is frightening.
To see how frightening the poem is, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I call my first witness, Mr. D.F.
My name ain't D.F. It's just Death, as in Grim Reaper, yeah?
Oh, I see. And actually, that does make a lot more sense, because my first question to you is, how frequently do you appear in the text? And I can't remember anybody called DF appearing in the text at all.
Idiot.
You've been burnt, mate.
Order! Death, will you just answer the question, please?
Listen, I appear in the text so much, it's practically like I'm actually a character in the poem. I'm in it all the time.
I use personification to make Death seem like a real character.
Ah, yes, into the jaws of death. Personification.
It makes me seem real and terrifying. Check out me jaws of death. And where did they all charge to?
Towards the cannons?
No, mate. They charged into the Valley of Death. Death with a capital D, making me seem even more prominent.
The Valley of Death is also a biblical reference.
As I walk through the Valley of the Shadow of Death, Psalm 23.
Why do you use biblical imagery, Tennyson?
It's set in 1854. People were much more religious then, and by hinting at the Bible, especially that dark and scary image,
The Shadow of Death.
the reader would have really understood how terrifying the situation was for the soldiers.
It also makes the reader have a bit of hope. For the soldiers who died, you know, maybe once they've died they can go on to a heaven or an afterlife way. But to believe that, you have to be religious.
A small hope. But you really go to town, Tennyson, with making the battle seem awful, don't you? Can't catch me, jaws of death! You really go out of your way to make the battle seem truly horrific, and yet you never question the people who sent the soldiers into that horrific battle. Those soldiers didn't stand a chance. I call our second witness, Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Putin. Now, looking at Tennyson's poem, would you say that those British soldiers didn't stand a chance?
The British were pathetic and had no chance against the mighty Russian forces. Tennyson makes this clear using anaphora in the third stanza. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them.
Exactly. Now, anaphora is just repeating the same word or phrase at the start of 2 or more lines of poetry.
I know this, you idiotic little man. Tennyson also repeats the anaphora in stanza 5. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them. Great big Russian cannons everywhere. Nobody can defeat the Russian military.
Whatever, Putin, with your name that just means tin of poo.
Legendary burn.
Putin cannot be burnt. He is flame-proof like bear. Oh, okay. So I use anaphora to show how powerful the enemy was. But this only emphasizes how brave the soldiers were. I also use anaphora in the final stanza. Yes, when I command the reader to honor the charge they made, honor the Light Brigade.
Yes, 2 imperatives there that order the reader to honour the soldiers. But why don't you use your imperatives to order the reader to question the orders given by the order-giving people in army who sent the Light Brigade to an almost certain death? And you use anaphora again in the second stanza, and I quote, "Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die." Sounds a lot to me like you're saying the soldiers should just shut the hell up and charge off to certain death.
Piffle! They followed orders because they were courageous.
If I told you to staple your own tongue to your face, would you do it?
Of course not.
Of course not, because it's a stupid order. Just like how the Light Brigade had been given a stupid order, and you even say so yourself. Line 12. Someone had blundered.
But the brave soldiers put Queen and country first and followed orders. It's heroic.
Mr. Tennyson, there is a difference between lunacy and bravery.
Okay, the poem is frightening. The battle is brutal. The soldiers were up against a truly fearsome enemy, and yes, I don't directly challenge the terrible orders. But isn't it time you focus on the positive ways that I portray the soldiers?
Oh, okay then. Well, let's call our third witness, who for copyright reasons will be referred to as Super Shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man.
Good day, everyone! It's me, Super Shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man, the bravest hero in all of Brave Town.
Okay, now is it true, Mr. Man?
I'm sorry, but I'll answer only to Super Shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man.
Really?
For real these.
Right? Okay. Is it true, Super Shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man, that Lord Tennyson here has tried really hard to make the British soldiers seem brave and heroic?
Super Shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man thinks this is true. Tennyson's language is powerful and dynamic when describing the British soldiers' Herculean efforts. They rode boldly into the jaws of death and the mouth of hell. They plunged through the battery smoke. The verb plunged is effective, suggesting power and determination, which is especially brave considering that they are plunging through the smoke of cannon fire. In stanza 4, Tennyson repeatedly uses the word saber. A saber is a sword. He also giving, a very heroic image indeed. A little bit like when the sunlight glints and twinkles from super shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man's awesome metal suit.
Oh, get on with it.
Super shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man will get on with it. Look at how the British soldiers made the Russians and Cossacks reel, shattered, and sundered. The alliteration of shattered and sundered further emphasizes how effective the valiant Brits were against the enemy. Right through the line they broke means that the Brits actually succeeded in breaking their way through the masses of enemy gunners. With only horses and swords? I mean, seriously, come on. Who brings a sword to a cannon fight?
Sword to a cannon fight. Classic burn.
Am I right? Even when we learn that a great many of the Light Brigade have fallen, Tennyson uses alliteration to emphasize their status. When horse and hero fell. Yes, it's a tragic end, but they are still heroes!
Right! And the rhetorical question at the start of the last stanza suggests that their heroism will live on forever. When can their glory fade? It will never fade. You lot are studying it now, in 2016, over 150 years later.
The short last stanza emphasizes two ideas. Firstly, that we should honor these brave soldiers, and secondly, that all the world wondered. The whole world will see these plucky Brits as truly brave. I believe that Tennyson wanted people to see that these soldiers were brave, almost as brave as Super Shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man. Oh my god, there's the spider up there. Don't like spiders. Super Shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man has just soiled his aluminum boxer shorts. Ooh.
Clear off, will you?
I thank that gigantic metal moron for showing the court that the poem is full of language techniques and vocabulary that honour those poor soldiers.
And you are clever with the rhythm and the rhyme, aren't you?
Quite clever.
The rhythm is pacey, it really drives the poem along, and it works because of the balance between the stressed and unstressed syllables in each line. To be honest, it's easier if you see it written down. So the stresses make the poem sound like this. Forward the Light Brigade was there a man dismayed, not though the soldier knew someone had blundered.
Super Shiny Hyper Mega Metal Man.
Oh, shut it, you great big tin can. Chuffing hell. Tennyson, why is your poem so rhythmical?
Well, the rhythm sounds a little like the galloping of horses charging across the battlefield. Easy.
Easy. Don't get cocky, you're still on trial, you know, with your greasy hair.
Oh,
Why don't you tell us about the rhyme scheme? That's not so easy, is it? So the sections that do rhyme emphasise key messages or ideas. And I guess the bits that do rhyme clearly could also represent the rigid discipline of the army.
Good thinking. Regimented, precise rhyme represent the order of the cavalry. Then they charge, but boom, 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 and the soldiers are all over the place. Just like the rhyme scheme.
Now why don't you tell the court about your use of semantic fields? Lots of words to do with the war and military then, but there aren't many images of gore. There ain't much blood and guts, is there, Tennyson? And why's that?
If your intestines are spilling out over the blood-splattered ground, well, the image just seems a little less heroic, so I avoided the gore.
Or perhaps you avoided the gore because if you would have presented the grim reality of dying on the battlefield, then your poem's readers would have protested against the army for sending so many young men to their deaths. Boom! Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's up to you to compare the evidence presented in the text in order to make up your mind about Tennyson's reasons and motives for writing this poem. If you come up with a bold and personal opinion, as long as you back it up with good evidence from the text, you'll be getting shed loads of marks. Are you going to argue that Tennyson played it safe and didn't want to challenge the people who gave those terrible, fateful orders that day? Or are you going to say that Tennyson worked really hard to try and highlight how brave and heroic the soldiers were? I'd suggest go for a bit of both. Compare both sides of the argument. Don't forget to compare this poem to another poem in the Power and Conflict cluster. And because I'm a grade A top drawer geezer, I'll get you started. The horrors of war are clear in the charge of the Light Brigade when, during the stinky bum Crimean War, brave British soldiers charged heroically against a mighty enemy. It's a bloodbath, and the poem really emphasises the scariness and chaos of the battleground. In Exposure by Wilfred Owen, soldiers are having a totally chuffing horrid time in World War I. But on Owen's battleground, there is a lot less fighting, cannon blasting and sword slashing. Here, the enemy is loneliness, homesickness, and the truly terrifying enemy of bad weather. Oh no, it's that fine rain that soaks you right through. Comparing the battlefields presented by Owen and Tennyson could be a good idea. The Aftermath of War is important in Remains by Simon Armitage. Post-traumatic stress disorder and the lasting impact of war haunts a poor soldier. He struggles to adapt to life at home when every time he sleeps he has nightmares of the gory carnage he's witnessed during his time in the army. In Charge of the Light Brigade, Tennyson drives home the importance of remembering soldiers as heroes. It totally avoids guts and gore, which is a stark contrast to the uber-grisly imagery presented by Armitage.
Oh, that proper hurts, that does!
By comparing these two poems, you can consider how we should respond to the deaths of soldiers. Should we pity and sympathise with them and be outraged by their suffering? Or should we celebrate and honour their brave sacrifices? Finally, Tennyson wants us to honour the Light Brigade for their bravery.
You're amazing!
But in Kamikaze by Beatrice Garland, we explore how a soldier is shamed and ostracised by his family and fellow countrymen because he chose not to fly a suicide mission.
You didn't kill yourself! We hate you, useless Danny!
So how we treat our soldiers is a key theme in these two poems, and two very different perspectives are presented. Something you could explore in your comparisons. There you have it. Oh, any final words, Tennyson?
Well, don't forget to mention the title. It's very factual and informative. But there's also the double meaning of the phrase Light Brigade.
Double meaning because the Light Brigade is actually the name of the military unit, but light could also represent good triumphing over evil and being brave and a hero.
Indeed.
The verdict on the poem is up to you, but for now the only thing that I can see Tennyson is truly guilty of is having a proper disgusting manky beard. I sentence you to 12 weeks intensive shampooing.
You, sir, are an imbecilic buffoon.
Now if you still think that you don't know naught, pay attention to these top 3 quotes. What is your real name anyway?